Welcome again, students. I trust that you're all well, healthy, and happy, that you've done and completed your class test online on Moodle already, and that you now are ready to take on the next topic in our study on how consumers behave and to try and crack the code on how we as future marketers can be more effective in selling the right products to them, offering them the right services that will solve their problems and satisfy their needs. Now, chapter 10, 201 to 215 page in your manual deals with personality and self-concept. And I think, as you've realized by now already, to try and understand how a consumer behaves when making a decision and which influences or impact on the decision that they take is rather challenging. If you add to that how they see themselves, self-concept, and their personality, which could be a combination of many traits, extroverts, introverts, aggressive people, kind people, conscientious people, makes it even more challenging to completely understand how the consumer is more than likely to operate and make a decision. But that's what we're going to attempt to do in this chapter. And we'll therefore start off by looking at the nature of personality, look at different characteristics of personality, and that will all be done in video 1, which would be the first in a series of 3 videos to cover chapter 10 on personality. In the second video, we'll be looking at the major theories of personality, Freud, New Freudian, the Gestalt, the trait theories, as well as contemporary theories like Hamish, but we'll get into more detail when we get to the second video in the series. We will also explain the influence of personality on lifestyle and why understanding personality is valuable to marketers. And in the final video in the series of 3, we'll be looking at the terms self and self-concept. Now, I know for sure that from studying business marketing in your first year that you are aware of the 20-80 rule, which basically says that 20% of your customers are responsible for 80% of your turnover and eventual profits of the business. And wouldn't it be grand if you could actually have a complete picture of what these 20% look like and how they behave, their behavior consistency? That will be amazing, and that will be for any marketer almost a jackpot. But it's not that easy, and therefore we have to study all our consumers, and not just the 20%, but also the complete 100%, because most businesses make the mistake of putting too much effort into the 20%, which we refer to as key accounts as well, and forget about the 80%. If there's a relocation of a popular business, the 20% of people who are so loyal to that business would not mind if it moves to a different location. They will follow them basically wherever they are. And therefore, it is sometimes not such a great idea to put all your efforts into the 20%, because you know that they will guarantee you that 80% of the profits. Something goes wrong, and those quickly, that 20% drops, and you have to rely on people that you have not paid that much attention to, which is the other 80%. We all know that the foundation for our behavior is provided by our needs and our motives. What we need, what we want, and what motivates us to satisfy those needs, that forms the foundation of our behavior. If we study personality, however, we might be able to categorize our behavior more systematically and try and find a consistency in our behavior patterns of our consumers. There is therefore definitely a direct relation between motivation and personality. Different people, based on their personalities and specific traits of their personality, will be motivated differently. Therefore, somebody looking at a commercial, or 3 or 4 people with different personalities looking at the same commercial will have different responses to the message that was sent out due to the difference in personalities. According to Walters and McGill, personality is the key to understanding a customer and how they behave and the patterns of behavior. What we as marketers therefore aim to do is to find a consistency in how customers satisfy their needs and also a consistent pattern in how they behave. In other words, the way in which someone makes a decision is as a result of their specific behavior, which is based on their personality. For instance, if you have advertisements or commercials, or we can't have commercials nowadays anymore because that's not prohibited in South Africa anymore. But if there are advertisements for a new alcoholic product, the people used in, or the personalities of the people that is used in an advertisement like that would be similar to the consumer that they're trying to target, which is usually outgoing, fun-loving people with extrovert personalities, and therefore they are trying to target the consumer who's more sort of an innovative individual, who is always willing to try something new. And we all know and have friends who have personalities like that. We are familiar with the different or the 4 major strategies that is used to segment our market. Usually geography or your geodemographics are used. That refers to the population density in a particular region in a country, in America, in a state that you're from. The demographics, which refer to your education, your gender, your religion, your occupation, your nationality, your age. Thirdly, your behavioral category, that refers to specifically your attitudes, your status in a particular community, as well as the knowledge you have about a product. And then psychographic, we specifically look at your lifestyle and your personality. Although I think we all have a clear understanding of what each of these categories represent, it has become extremely important to look specifically at the psychographics. That is a combination of a combination of personality and lifestyle of a consumer. Because, for instance, if you live in Gauteng, then you will be categorized according to your geography. In other words, where you stay. If you add the demographics to that, you might be a male or a female person of a certain age with a specific occupation, who lives in the Gauteng region for that matter, and you will behave based on, and that is all fine, but you can't pinpoint how those customers are going to behave, because although you might be in the same region and of the same gender, or even different genders and different occupations and different religions, your personality is going to be different, even if you are living in the same geographical area, go to the same church, have the same gender, um, your personalities are different, and that's why it's become so important for marketers to study psychographics, which looks at your personality or the personality of a consumer. If we look at the nature of personality, it becomes clear to us that it's a fascinating field of study, and it's very complex, and for that reason we probably rather leave it to the psychologist and just ensure that we are educated about all the different aspects that involve the forming of a personality. All of us create our own social identity, which we then communicate with others, because it's free for us to select whichever products we want. And we're usually going to choose the products that um, helps define who we are. In other words, our choices that we make about the products that we buy says a lot about who we are, what type of people we prefer to identify ourselves with, and definitely who we wish to avoid. And that's why it's so difficult, because um, they're all different. We all have different schools of thought in this regard. And once we get to the next set of, in the series, and we look at the personality theories, it becomes a bit more clear why it is such a challenging field to study. I think from the two definitions that you find there on your slide, it is very clear that your personality refers to specifically the inner characteristics, the inner psychological characteristics that you display when you make your decisions, and therefore the consistency of an individual, of or how consistently individual makes the same decisions, reflects on how they cope with the internal and external environment and all the stimuli provided by the internal and external environment when it influences the consumer before they make a final decision. Um, Personality provides us therefore with a pattern of how we are going to respond to the stimuli, be it internally or from external sources, and specifically the consistency in how we, as a result of our personality, react in the same situation. When we study personality of or the personalities of consumers, it is important that we take into account four aspects, which we will go into more detail just now in the following set of slides. And that is that our personality reflects our individual differences. It also is consistent and enduring, and personality is conceived of the whole as a whole, actualizing itself in an environment, and then also personality can and does change. Firstly, personality reflects our individual differences. We all are different. There's not a single one of us who are exactly the same. But there are some specific personal characteristics that we might all have. The larger portion of consumers are different, or have a different combination of of personality traits, but there are one or two of these personality traits that actually allow marketers to segment and categorize customers and target the efforts at that specific personality trait specifically. In other words, an aggressive person, let's look at the aggressiveness for instance. You have people who are naturally aggressive. Their first form of defense is always attack. They they drive aggressively. They talk aggressively. Their whole nature is an aggressive nature. But then you have the more um, subdued individual who's not by nature aggressive, but if provoked and put in a very difficult situation, there may be um, um, somebody near to them or themselves have been offended, there's an aggressive side that also comes out. So it's not the dominant trait of that personality, but it is one of the traits of that particular personality. Secondly, our personalities um, has a consistency about them. Our personality is definitely categorized by a stability during changes. And that um, stability of your personality um, makes it unreasonable for marketers to try and change a customer's personality. You cannot change the customer's personality, but you can change how they react in a specific situation. They are not going to change their personality, they might change their behavior based on a particular situation. Marketers can therefore only try and learn which personality characteristic is the most dominant one and is the one that's going to action the response. And this is what they have to, these specific personality traits is what they then have to, or they find is inherent in a particular market that they are targeting. Thirdly, we need to see personality as a whole, um, and um, we cannot isolate individuals and individual personalities. We need to make sure that we do not abstract it from the environment in which the consumers find themselves. Most important characteristics of the whole individual comes from his or her environment, especially the social cultural environment. And therefore we cannot isolate the when we try and understand the personality of a consumer, we cannot isolate the consumer from the environment and the environmental influences that affect how they behave, not how it changes the personality. The personality traits still remain the same, but how does the environmental influences affect the way in which a consumer behaves? We've said earlier on that personality, one of the characteristics of personality is that it is actually consistent, and in most cases it is consistent, but there are certain circumstances that change the consistency. It is often because of a major event in your life. Often it could be a traumatic experience like a car accident or the death of a family member or a friend. And then furthermore, personalities can also change gradually over time as you mature and grow. Um, I know now, reflecting back on my life, and I mean, there's still many years to go, but I was definitely um, I was definitely um, a more reactive individual who wanted to fix problems immediately in an enthusiastic manner, Um, Sometimes picked fights that I think afterwards you realize you would never have won in the first place anyway. And as you mature and grow through different phases in your life cycle, your personality changes to the extent that you still have very strong opinions about certain aspects. But sometimes, because you have matured, you now allow the other person to also express their opinions and you listen to their opinions. You are still strong and you still express your opinion, but you're not trying to force your opinion on others, which often happens earlier in our lives because we feel so passionately about or have such a passion about a specific subject that we feel very strongly about. So, up to this point, I think we've done enough in the first video for you to have a lot of food for thought. The personality of and the personality traits of consumers are such a varying um, field that it is very difficult for marketers to to pin it down to one or two aspects because people's personalities, as I said, can change, although it's mostly consistent. When we return in the second video in a series of three, we'll be looking at the different personality theories as well as why personality is valuable for marketers.